What happened in the match against Liverpool left every West Ham supporter stunned, and there is simply no other place to begin. Lucas Paqueta was a complete disaster, an embarrassment, on a day loaded with emotion, a day when West Ham needed total commitment. Playing for the badge, for the club, and for their teammates, he delivered none of it. He let the team down, he let the club down, he let the supporters down. And that is what hurts the most, because West Ham stepped onto the pitch carrying an enormous emotional weight, and instead of rising to it, he tore everything apart with a completely unacceptable attitude. If someone didn't watch the match, Liverpool 2, West Ham 0. No complaints, no excuses. Liverpool were the better team. We didn't even register a shot on target. They deserved to win. At times, we competed, we won duels, we showed some strength in certain areas of the pitch. It wasn't one of those matches where the team gives up from the first minute, but overall the feeling was obvious. We allowed Liverpool to be far too comfortable. The commentator said it looked like a training session, and it genuinely did. We knew they were under pressure, wounded, desperate for a response, and yet we never put anything on them. We didn't test them, we didn't unsettle them, we didn't make the match difficult for them. What makes it even more frustrating is that throughout the entire week, Arne Slot, sections of the Liverpool fanbase, and pundits like Jamie Carragher openly said that Liverpool struggle when the opposition are physical, when the game becomes heavy, aggressive, and full of duels, and West Ham simply ignored it. We didn't show physicality, we didn't impose ourselves, we didn't make the match demanding for them. The performance was weak, not the worst of the season, but hugely disappointing. Yet even so, nothing wound me up as much as Paqueta's behavior. Nothing came close. He picked up a yellow card for waving his arms, complaining, throwing a tantrum at a referee's decision. And yes, the referee was awful, terrible. I don't usually come here to talk about referees, it's not my style, but today he was genuinely dreadful. There was a moment halfway through the first half when I even wondered if he was a Liverpool supporter. Of course he isn't, but that's how poor the officiating felt. But none of that changes the essential point. You have to play the game, understand the type of officiating, and adapt. Paqueta didn't do that. He got irritated, lost control, and kept marching towards the referee as if determined to get himself sent off. And that's where the captain's role becomes crucial. Jarrod Bowen, an excellent player, didn't do enough in that moment. He was far too passive. With the rule that only the captain can speak to the referee, you need someone who imposes authority, someone who recognizes danger instantly. Paqueta was clearly on the verge of talking himself into real trouble, and Bowen didn't act. He didn't pull him away, didn't step in, didn't ask for help. And I'm not excusing Bowen. The main blame is Paqueta's, without question. But it was a preventable situation. The sending off was coming, everyone saw it, and no one intervened. If we were in a calmer moment, I might have said I didn't want to see Paqueta wearing a West Ham shirt for quite some time. But we are desperate. We need him. He is probably the most talented player in the squad, even though he was invisible today. It's one of those no-choice scenarios, but it's impossible not to wonder, does he want to leave in January? Because the way he behaved did not match someone committed to the club's current situation. It didn't match someone who understood the emotional weight of the day. And behind the scenes, the temperature was even higher. According to a few people close to the situation, right after the match, in a moment of raw, exposed nerves, NUNO Espirito Santo let something slip that no one expected to hear. If Paqueta keeps behaving like this, he won't play under NUNO anymore. It was a sentence spoken in the heat of the post-match chaos, but it hit like a bomb among those who heard it. Because it wasn't just an irritated manager, it was a manager at his limit, making it clear that he won't carry alone the weight of a player who destabilizes the team at the very moment it most needs balance. Meanwhile, the match carried on in exactly the same tone. Areola, without producing miracles, still kept us in it for much of the first half. Walker-Peters was very good, bringing energy and bravery, even picking up a yellow card in a challenge where he clearly played the ball first. He fought, he ran, he was one of the few bright sparks in a dim team. And that makes everything more painful, because this wasn't a match where everyone played badly. Several players were simply average. Callum Wilson worked hard, ran, battled, but received absolutely nothing. We didn't give him a single ball to attack, and we still managed to miss every cross that could have reached him. Not one bit of service, not one decent delivery. And here's the thing. I thought we wouldn't miss Somerville, but we did. Mateus Fernandes had a very good first half, even creating a spectacular play for Wilson. Todibo, once again, was solid. But all of that gets swallowed when the general feeling is of a team without spark, without instinct, and when one of your best players loses his head and leaves you in trouble. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. When we take a deep breath and try to look with a bit more clarity at what happened in the match against Liverpool, the feeling doesn't improve. On the contrary, it gets worse. Because the more you revisit the moments, the atmosphere, the team's posture, the more it becomes clear that West Ham simply did not enter the match emotionally. The team looked hollow on the inside, without that raw energy that usually appears when the occasion is big. And that emotional emptiness makes everything even more painful, because it wasn't just a tactical or technical defeat, it was a defeat of the soul. Paqueta's sending off symbolized this in a nearly cruel way. It wasn't just an exaggerated complaint, it wasn't just a silly yellow. It was the collapse of what the team needed most in that moment. In a heavy match against Liverpool, West Ham needed to show it still had direction, identity, emotional structure to withstand the pressure coming from the other side. And when the moment demanded maturity, he fell apart. When one of your most important players implodes emotionally, he doesn't fall alone, he drags everyone down with him. That is exactly what happened. His behavior contaminated the team, and the rest of the players simply couldn't find the strength to react. And this leads to what might be the most frustrating point, the lack of leadership on the pitch. It's evident that Nuno Espirito Santo has a monumental task ahead of him. The team doesn't seem to have a clear emotional reference. Bowen is a technical leader, but he is not a vocal leader. The center backs try to hold things together, but each is so preoccupied with his own sector that he can't guide the group. And in moments of chaos, when everything happens quickly, when the officiating collapses, when the opponent applies pressure, that is when someone must dictate the emotional rhythm of the team. Yesterday, that figure simply did not exist. This issue becomes obvious in the details. Magassa, for instance, tries to push the team forward with runs and courage. He shows spirit, he tries to spark the team emotionally, but there is no echo. It's as if he is banging on closed doors. He steps up, he challenges for the ball. He tries to impose physical presence, but that energy dies instantly, because nobody follows it. And even in the moment when he receives an exaggerated yellow card, instead of seeing the team unite or show controlled indignation, nothing happens. Magassa was one of the few flames still lit, but he was a lone flame in a dark room. And then we return to the inevitable point. Individual errors in an emotionally fragile team grow tenfold. When Mavropanos fails on the first goal, he doesn't return reorganizing. He doesn't call the defense. He doesn't come back with the posture of someone correcting a mistake. He returns dazed, lost. That sets the tone for the whole team. On the second goal, even with 10 men, you still expect contesting, fighting, some reaction. But nothing happened. It was as if the team had accepted its fate, and when a team accepts it, the opponent senses it instantly, and the match slips away completely. The attack then barely existed. West Ham simply didn't create anything. Callum Wilson became an isolated fighter. The ball didn't reach him with any quality, not once. And the crosses? An endless sequence of failed attempts, without accuracy, without power, without purpose. There was no service, no supply line. Everything was slow, predictable, and harmless. It seemed like the team needed a spark, a burst, a single moment to break the pattern. But that moment never arrived. And in this scenario, Somerville's absence weighed far more than many expected. The lack of depth in the squad is astonishing. There is a shortage of players with offensive personality, with pace, with the ability to unbalance matches. All of that is missing. Mateus Fernandes, at least, showed flashes. That through ball to Wilson was one of the rare moments of creative clarity. Todibo maintained his high standard, even while carrying enormous pressure. He plays like someone trying to hold the world on his shoulders, but without support beside him. And in an emotionally broken team, even the good performances get lost. like isolated notes in a completely out-of-tune song. And then you understand that West Ham's problem goes far beyond what happens with the ball. It's not only tactical, it's not only physical, it's not only the glaring lack of quick players, which, yes, is a huge issue. It's deeper, it's emotional, it's structural. The team feels fragile from the inside, as if it desperately needed figures who pull the rope when it's about to snap. Players who make the group believe that a reaction is possible even when everything is falling apart. And when the very player who should be that anchor, that technical beacon in the darkness, loses his head and abandons the team, the collapse becomes inevitable. The most alarming part is that even with 10 men, West Ham did not find even the faintest spark of reaction. Normally, when a team goes down to 10, a survival instinct appears. The players unite, tighten lines, fight for every ball. But yesterday, no. West Ham looked numb, and Luis Guilherme's moment summarized it perfectly. He comes on, makes a great movement, has the chance to shoot or play in Wilson, and hesitates. That hesitation is the portrait of the team. In top-level football, hesitation is death. And against Liverpool, West Ham hesitated more than it breathed, and this hesitation only exists because the squad was poorly built. It lacks a winger. It lacks a striker. It lacks a quick center back. It lacks depth. It lacks explosiveness. And this isn't the fault of one director alone. It's the accumulation of years of misaligned decisions, poorly planned choices, and interference that dismantled any attempt at coherence. The result is a slow, predictable, heavy team, extremely dependent on individual moments. And when the individual you depend on the most emotionally implodes and abandons the team, no miracle can solve it. Before we carry on, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. This is really important because it strengthens the Claret and Blue family, making our West Ham bigger and stronger every day. And now, looking even deeper into what happened in the match against Liverpool, it becomes clear that the problem is not simply the sum of individual mistakes, poor decisions, or Paqueta's sending off. The whole is much deeper. It feels as though West Ham, as a group, has lost its identity on the pitch. It isn't just technical solutions that are missing. Conviction is missing. Clarity is missing. Purpose is missing. And the most striking part is how brutally this was exposed when the team needed to react. Because there was no reaction, not even the beginning of one. The team looked numb, as if merely fulfilling a fixture, and precisely in a match that demanded every visceral instinct football can produce. This weighs heavily when you consider the context of the squad. West Ham simply does not have players who can change the tempo of a match on their own. There is no forward who breaks lines, who attacks space, who forces defenders to retreat in fear. Without that kind of profile, matches stack up like identical photographs. A team defending, a team trying to stay organized, a team that battles for a few minutes, but when it needs quick transition, has nowhere to run. It is painful to watch because it has become predictable, and when football becomes predictable, the opponent controls everything, and Liverpool controlled absolutely everything. And then, inevitably, frustration turns to anger. Because it's not just that the team lacks pieces, it's that it lacks pieces because of decisions made years ago and never corrected. The club has long ignored the need for pace. While many Premier League teams play with 3 or 4 explosive players, West Ham plays with 1, sometimes none. And that damages everything. Counter-attacking, recovery runs, build-up play, the ability to unsettle the opposition. In modern football, without pace, you get swallowed whole. Even so, the most alarming part is that despite all these deficiencies, the team is still desperately dependent on Paqueta, dependent to the point of tolerating his behavior and continuing to count on him. That alone shows the magnitude of the problem. West Ham is tied to a player who, when emotionally tuned in, offers something no one else offers. But when he is out of sync, like in the match against Liverpool, he becomes the epicenter of chaos. And a club of this size cannot remain emotionally and technically hostage to someone so unstable. You cannot build a season on that foundation. And the inevitable question arises, does Paqueta want to stay? Does he want to fight? Does he want to be a protagonist? Because yesterday he looked completely disconnected. That casts a huge shadow over the rest of the squad. When the most talented player transmits disinterest, impatience, and irritation, That spreads instantly. Football is an emotional game. Energy moves between players. And Paqueta's energy yesterday was poison. It drained confidence, drained focus, drained conviction. A player can make technical mistakes, but losing his head and dragging the team down with him is the type of error that costs far too much. At the same time, there is the other side. West Ham need him. There is no choice. There is no replacement. There is no squad depth to bench a player of that level because of temperament, and that makes everything suffocating. The team needs him to survive the season, but it also needs to build a path where he is no longer the only beacon. It's an uncomfortable paradox, and it will require intelligence from Nuno Espirito Santo to stop the squad from collapsing emotionally before the window even opens. And speaking of the window, it is impossible to ignore the reality. West Ham desperately need reinforcements. They need a quick winger who can attack space and force the opposition back. They need a striker with presence, so Callum Wilson isn't left isolated running into brick walls. They need a quick center back because the team cannot survive with the defense that suffers in every transition. And all of this should have been dealt with long ago, not now with the season underway and the team emotionally battered. But because nothing was done, everything now depends on January. The apathy of the second half makes this even clearer. Once reduced to 10, Liverpool should have felt at least some discomfort, some doubt, some inconvenience, but they felt nothing. They controlled the match, controlled possession, held the scoreline, and only failed to extend the lead out of carelessness. This exposes how badly West Ham need players who can change scenarios. Football is decided by people who do the unexpected, who break patterns, who destabilize opponents. West Ham had none of that. This technical and emotional emptiness is what makes the defeat so heavy. And perhaps the most symbolic image was Luis Guilherme's moment. He comes on, finds space, makes the right run, reaches the decision point, and hesitates. He doesn't shoot. He doesn't pass. He freezes. That hesitation is the perfect portrait of the team's mental state. Playing without conviction is playing defeated, and West Ham played without conviction. They played without belief. They played as if waiting to lose. In the end, what weighs the most is not the scoreline. It's the absence of intensity, the emotional emptiness, the lack of response, the feeling that no one stepped up when responsibility was screaming to be taken. And above all, the fact that Paqueta, the one who should ignite the team, was the one who extinguished any chance of reaction. That is why everything feels so heavy. Because West Ham needed light, and instead received shadow. And now it falls to Nuno. It falls to him to reorganize emotionally, rebuild confidence, find alternatives, rethink strategies, and demand reinforcements. Because it is impossible to continue with a squad so limited in pace, so predictable offensively, and so psychologically dependent on a single player. What we saw against Liverpool cannot happen again, not because of the scoreline, but because of what it represented. A team that did not respond, did not fight with conviction, and could not hold itself together when the wind turned. So that's all for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, leave a comment, share, and of course subscribe to the channel for more. Take care, and I'll see you next time.